Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. My name is Vadim Perlovsky, and today the force is with us. We are excited to try Tamdhu, a distillery that I've been excited about and looking forward to trying since I met up with Gordon at Glengoyne last year. Gordon Dundas is here to, wait, did I say that right?
Dundas, but yeah.
Dundas. Gordon
Yeah,
Dundas
okay,
is
don't
here. Gordon is the global brand ambassador, global portfolio manager,
Yeah, that'll do.
guy who talks
Yeah.
about this distillery everywhere in the world, and he's
Yeah.
on Zoom with us today. So enjoy, ask questions, get nerdy. That's what we're all here about. Anyone who's here for the first time, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're here, as I said, to ask questions, to learn about the brand, to taste some whiskey. We're not here to get sloshed, but we are here to learn. So participate. Keep yourself on mute unless you are asking a question, but you are always invited to unmute or chat or what have you. Enjoy. This is not a TV show where you're just staring at it. This is a participatory event. So all that said, we're super excited to welcome Tamdhu Distillery, arguably one of the last hidden gems for sherry cask whiskeys in Scotland. One that I said I've been very curious to try, and I'm excited that we have an amazing lineup in front of us today. And there's no better person to talk about this distillery than Gordon. Welcome, Gordon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Great to see everybody here. Hope you're all having a lovely evening. Yeah, look, there's plenty to talk about with this wonderful distillery, but you know, the first thing, I just want to give you a little bit of background about us as a business, and why we and how we've got Tamdhu, how we now produce it, etc., etc. So we are Ian MacLeod Distillers. We are one of these last rare things that we have in in Scotland as a family-run Scotch whisky distillery, which is great, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. And you know, really, it's part of the Ian MacLeod group. So Ian MacLeod was basically a family business started in 1933. It was a broking business. It was everything in Scotch whisky for many, many years, up until 2003. It didn't own a distillery. And then in 2003, we purchased Glengoyne Distillery, which some of you may be familiar with, which is a beautiful single malt from not too far away from Glasgow. And then after that, we, in 2011, purchased Tamdhu. And what's significant about this is we purchased both of these distilleries from Edrington Group, which is the Macallan. So we'll explain a little bit more about why that's significant. And finally, the third part of the picture is that we're bringing back a very famous whiskey distillery in Scotland called Rosebank, which is going to be open for in the next sort of 6 months or so. And that is an iconic lowland whiskey. So that's a whiskey, if you look it up, anybody will tell you one of the most famous Scotch whiskies ever in the realms of Port Ellen and Brora. One of the most iconic distilleries. We're spending a lot of money rebuilding that distillery. And finally, there's a final part of the jigsaw. We are also building a distillery on, and Jeff, you might be quite interested in this, on Islay. So we are building a distillery opposite the airport on Islay. So there's quite a lot going on for us at the moment, which is very exciting. But let's focus on Tamdhu. Now, I've just noticed my laptop's not charging, which I'm a little bit like, oh my God, it might switch off very shortly. So just give me 2 seconds and I'll make sure that that is all charging. That would be good if it did. It does look like it's charging, which is good. So let's talk a little bit about Tamdhu. So has anybody had Tamdhu before? Oh, a couple of people, Jason. I mean, the thing about Tamdhu is we've owned it for 10 years, 12 years. But if you drive around Speyside, and I'm assuming a lot of people may have been to Speyside. Anybody? Yeah? If you drive around Speyside, they have these wonderful signs that tell you where Glenfiddich are and tell you where Glenlivet are, and all these wonderful distilleries, Macallan, etc., etc. Tamdhu's not like that because you can't visit Tamdhu. We don't have a visitor center per se. However, so you sort of have to find out where it is. It's down the road, round the corner. Here you go. The brand is a little bit like that as well. We are in a situation that we sell everything we have because of a decision that was made in the warehouse when we bought Tamdhu. Leonard, who's our owner, decided, he said, when I bought this, we bought this distillery not just for single malt. Let me be very clear. We bought it for quite a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons, it's a 4 million litre distillery. We bought it for scope of whiskey for us to trade, looking back at our history in terms of broking, getting access to other whiskies from other suppliers. But also, we wanted to produce a fantastic single malt. Now, if you look at this beautiful single malt, beautiful, beautiful bottle, beautiful single malt, that's 10 to 15% of the production of Tamdhu, because we can only buy so many sherry casks. And that was as a direct result of Leonard in the warehouses in 2011 saying, I want to produce only sherry cask whiskey. So immediately all those wonderful bourbon casks which are great casks, and Tamdhu's lovely in them, we were not going to use them at all for single malt. We were only going to use sherry casks. And from that day forward, every time you see a bottle like this of Tamdhu, it's only sherry cask whiskey. And what do I mean by sherry cask? We will talk a little bit about that. But also, I think it's important to have a whiskey. I'm not going to stop and talk all day. I mean, it's quite early in the morning here. It's whiskey time. So I'm going to have a little bit of whiskey. We're going to start with the 10-year-old. I think you have the Tamdhu 10, and then we have the 12. We're going to move on to the distinction. We're going to move on to the 15, the 18. We're going to finish on the batch strength. So I think you have the Tamdhu 10, which was the original, and this is quite apt because it was the original release that we produced from Tamdhu. Back in 2014, 2015, we only had a 10-year-old. That was the only whiskey we had because we didn't have old enough stocks to produce anything else. So this was the only whiskey that ever hit the market, the Tamdhu 10-year-old, and it's obviously all sherry cask whiskey. This is a very beautiful sipping whiskey, just an absolutely lovely example of Tamdhu. So I will also show you some pictures and things as we come through the as we come through the tasting and things of the distillery, but also a couple of things on sherry casks. But I think what's very interesting is that the style of the spirit is still very prominent in Tamdhu. So, sherry casks do not have to be sherry bombs. And I think that's very, very important. You will also potentially see Tamdhu from independent bottlers in bourbon casks. It's a beautiful whiskey. It's an absolutely gorgeous whiskey. But we only produce, when we use this bottle, only produce sherry cask whiskey. So let's try the 10, everybody. Enjoy. Slanjiva. Oh, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So if you look at Tamdhu, we have it's a big distillery. It's genuinely Speyside. So it's located about 5 miles from Macallan. It's right beside Cardew Distillery, right beside Knockandu Distillery, which is literally just down the road. And from our perspective, it's a very big site where we actually do a lot of warehousing for all of our products. We have a little bit of Glengoyne there. We have some Rosebanks up there. And it allows us to have the space that we do not have at Glengoyne, which I know some of you are going. I think Jeff's going. Vadim's been to Glengoyne. It's a small but perfectly formed distillery, but it's not big at all. So it's certainly something which we needed as a business, far less to produce great single malt. What does everybody think of the 10-year-old? Anybody got a comment? Laurie? I'm just going to ask people and see what they think. Anybody got a comment?
I think
This
you
is
were
just
saying it right. It's not a sherry bomb. I mean, the fig and the plum and everything is there, but so's the malt still. You still get the honey and the granola, and those things still last. Whereas if you get a big cherry bomb, those are going to get obliterated.
Yeah, and look, Jason, as we go through the range, you're going to see as we increase the different types of casks that we use, and I'm going to talk a lot about this, but you'll see as we move from the into the 12, which is still in the same area as this and beautifully put together malt, into the 15 and the 18, we're going to see a little bit more of that European oak sherry. And it's all about the type of oak casks that we use that determines the impact of the maturation on that spirit in that whiskey. So all these things come together in terms of producing great whiskey, which makes you then think as a range, oh, I might drink this 12 at a different time of the day or a different occasion to when I drink the 18 or something like that. So we'll talk about that as we go through the range. But yeah, I mean, the 10 is a lovely dram to sort of welcome us into the realms of Tamdhu. Has anybody drunk Tamdhu regularly? I mean, the point is, it's as a brand, as a whiskey, it's never going to be everywhere because of the size of the size of the pot of casks that we have at the moment. But what I think you do find is when you discover Tamdhu, you're very happy that you have. And we're seeing very much that when people drink Tamdhu, find Tamdhu for the first time, they become real fans. So we were at the Spirit of Speyside Whiskey Festival last week, which was occurring, which obviously is it's the equivalent of Fèis Eel, which is the Islay Whiskey Festival up in Speyside. So all the distilleries were doing events, and we were up there at, I mean, I tell you, my last couple of weeks has been quite interesting, as Mike will tell you. I was in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, working for work. It wasn't for play. And then went straight from there to the Spirit of Speyside Whiskey Festival. You can't get almost two places that are as far apart different than you can from Las Vegas to Speyside. But what was interesting was at both of them, there were real fans of Tamdhu who had found the brand and told all their friends about it. And that's really how we get a lot of people coming to Tamdhu. We don't have massive budgets to talk to do billboards and all that type of thing, but it's all about the sort of the style of whiskey that really approaches a lot of people. So we're very excited about where Tamdhu is going to go. So I hope you're all enjoying it. Interestingly, it's interesting, a couple of the notes here. One of the things that Tamdhu is very, 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 very lightly peated, to the point that I wouldn't ever call it a peated whiskey. But like all things, all good things, if your malt has historically been very, 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 very lightly peated from 20, 30 years ago, why change it? Why would you change it? Let's just continue to do that. So you're not ever going to find it. I don't think I ever find it. Potentially a little whiff occasionally, which I go, really? But I don't think it even appears on the ppm scale. I wouldn't even throw that out. It's got no particular, it's just, I genuinely think it's somebody's walked past with a bit of peat, and that's about it. It's not very peated at all. But the one thing that when we look at Tamdhu, if we look at how it's sort of put together, it's a very, as I said, it's got three sets of stills set up. So its style of whiskey is very interesting, because Sandy, who comes from Diageo, he comes from the background of a mass whiskey market. So he has worked at distilleries that if you drive around Tamdhu, drive around Speyside, there's a whole load of signs of distilleries that you'll never have heard of. Like there's Glen whatever, and you'll be like, oh, well, I've never heard of that, because it's a distillery that's really only producing single malt for blends, not as brands. So when you work in that sphere, you're all about targeted driven production. We need to hit this amount of spirit. You've got, we're using this amount of barley. You have to hit this efficiency to make this amount of spirit, because it's going into blends, it's going into refill casks, it's going into everything except a single malt bottle. So Sandy came from that and had, and his sort of expression is, we used to just whack the stills on, get them hot, get the spirit through the stills into casks, into vats. And that's what his target was. That's what he was. So they're not focusing on flavor. So if I took all of you in the Tamdhu helicopter, if there was a Tamdhu helicopter, and we went on a tour of Speyside around 10 or 15 different whiskey distilleries, we would all have different still shapes, and we would all have slightly different nuanced production techniques on top of the standard water, malted barley and yeast, which help us define our flavor and our style of spirit, which is fine. We think of Glenmorangie, although not on Speyside, very tall stills. Think of other stills on Islay, very, very different. That's what defines their style. But the one thing people don't talk about maybe as much is how we heat those stills, how you cook that wonderful, how you distill that product in terms of temperature. And at Glengoyne and Tamdhu, we really hold the temperatures to pretty much the boiling point of alcohol, which is, I think it's about 173 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, or 177, 78.3 degrees C, if anybody works in centigrade. So that's how, so therefore we're not forcing all of that liquid and all of those vapors through the system as quick. We're allowing the copper to do its work, which gives us flavor, which you see in this 10 and you see in this in all of the products in the 12 and the 15. So that's a little bit about the sort of spirit style that we produce. So it's something which I'm very passionate about, because it's something that you can sometimes only make whiskey taste of a cask. It's very easy to use great casks and make whiskey taste of just the matured spirit. You'd have no idea that the whiskey underneath is a Tamdhu or an anything else. You would just have really heavy, sort of cask maturation flavors, which is, some people like that, but I think for me, it's really important for us to understand that Tamdhu can offer a really unique spirit style. So I'm, and let's use those sherry casks to showcase that, as well as, of course, the wonderful maturation that we have. So there we go. I'm glad you enjoyed the 10-year-old. Anybody got a question so far on production, on Tamdhu?
Since it doesn't specify what type of sherry you're using, I'm assuming it's Oloroso on this one.
Very good question. Absolutely. Tamdhu, we only use Oloroso sherry casks. Now, I think it's safe to say when you buy a Scotch whiskey and it says sherry cask and it says nothing else, you're probably looking at Oloroso sherry. If it's PX, generally people would mention that it's got Pedro Jimenez in it. If it's got Fino or anything else, which is a lighter style sherry, then it would probably be mentioned. But Oloroso generally is the style of sherry cask that we use at Tamdhu, and the industry mainly uses for sherry casks. But of course, sherry casks are still very rarely used in Scotch compared to ex-bourbon casks. And just to give you an indication of why that is, one of the main reasons is availability, which therefore means that sherry cask prices are significantly, probably 10 times the cost of a bourbon cask, if not more. So we've got a very lovely film that talks about our sherry casks, which I will share in the chat for you all. Brilliant watch if you want to understand more about the modern day sherry cask in its finest form, because like everything in life, if you pay for this and that's the best you can get, there generally are other levels that other people may use to get sherry casks at a lower price. Are they as good? probably not, and we'll explain why that is. So that's the 10-year-old. I think what's really interesting is when we produced the 10-year-old, that was the only product we have. That was back in the mid-teens, 20 teens, and we produced it in a tube. It was basically a Tamdhu bottle like this, came in a tube, and it was really in we're going to get a 15. We actually need to present the range a little bit better. I think it's one of the most iconic bottles in Scotch whiskey. I absolutely love it as a bottle. I think it shows a beautiful sort of style to it. It's got lovely Victorian heritage because it's a Victorian distillery. I can't sit here and say this is one of the oldest distilleries on Speyside. It isn't. 1897 is still a long time ago, but it's not the oldest, of course. The oldest distillery in Scotland is about 1776, which is very old. So we wanted to initially highlight the Victorian era and the modern aspect of the distillery. It was some of the names that were involved in the creation of Tamdhu were Grant and Dewars and Walker. These are very famous names in Scotch whiskey, and they basically used Tamdhu, and they took all the very modern aspects of all the other distilleries of the time and put them all into one distillery. So it's probably the most modern distillery of its time back in 1897, located on Speyside. Yeah, Vadim's got the box that it sits in, and you can see how Tamdhu is displayed in that box with its natural color, beautiful bottle. So back in 1897, it was the most modern distillery in Scotland, probably. And I think it was located where its absolute location is currently because of a train station giving access for those sherry casks from Glasgow to come into Tamdhu and be filled and take them away back to market. So a beautiful location on Speyside. If you go to Tamdhu now, though, it isn't, I'm going to be honest, it's not the most beautiful distillery you've ever seen. There are distilleries that are a little bit more attractive than Tamdhu. So, I mean, it is a distillery which still does plenty of, we don't have visitors, but it's certainly a distillery which I'm just finding a couple of pictures to share with you. It is a distillery which we are very proud of and produces wonderful whiskey, but it isn't, if you want to get that iconic picture of a Scotch whiskey distillery, Tamdhu's not the first place I would recommend you go to. Glengoyne, probably a little bit more picturesque, but and you'll have a great time, anybody who's going there, but you can't visit Tamdhu. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't, of course, just have a wander around the site. So I'm just having a little look at a picture of Tamdhu for you, if I can sort it out. Any questions on the first whiskey before we move on to the second one?
I think we're ready for the 12. You covered the bottle shape. That was the next thing I was going to ask.
Yeah, look, the bottle shape is obviously an iconic bottle shape. It's certainly something that
is that something that's what it's always been from the.
Yeah, from when we launched the brand. I'm just trying to find a few pictures to share with you. So I'm just going to see if I can
I'm saying, was this the shape before you guys?
No, no, sorry. This was not the shape. This is developed by us.
Okay.
So Tamdhu before this was a whiskey which was actually lightly available in a single malt form, sort of older, more traditional style bottle. It was never particularly thought of as brilliant by any stretch of the imagination. Sold with no real strategy behind it by Edrington. Bourbon casks and sherry casks married together. But when we took it, we really focused on certain aspects to produce that. So the Victorian era, but also, we wanted to only produce sherry cask whiskey. So we were very keen to just focus on what was important, and the Victorian era at that point was really important to us. So this came from an old soda siphon sort of style of bottle, and I think it's beautiful. I'm a huge fan of the bottle. So I'm just going to share this here. I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
I'm just put it into slideshow. So that's the, I hope you can see that picture.
Mhm.
That's the distillery there. This large part in the middle here is the sort of still house and the mill room at the back. So that's where all of the main production takes place in this shape here. These are new malt bins that we have here. The old traditional dunnage style warehouses are here just on the right of the distillery. This is all new warehousing here on the in the foreground. If you actually look just above, up to the left, up the top there, that is Tamdhu Distillery up there. And then just literally where the sun is coming from over the horizon is where Macallan is. So we're not far apart from a lot of other distilleries, but again, you need to sort of find out where Tamdhu is. So here's an older picture of Tamdhu looking the other way. You can see what I was saying about beauty. I mean, it's not something you go there and you go, oh, what a beautiful distillery. So if you just pick up the 12, it's nice to have a little sample of the 12 as we're going through this. That big grey horrific building here, which has now been knocked down, that's the old Saladin boxes. This was a way in which you could malt barley rather than using a malt floor. They're effectively big, for want of a better phrase, swimming pools where you pour empty swimming pools where you pour malt in and you turn them within that arena to produce your malt. So this distillery used to produce malt for Macallan, Glenrothes, Highland Park, and you can see that as a slightly older picture. These are the old Saladin boxes here where this has all been knocked down now. So up to that wall here has all been knocked down. These are the houses that we still have about 8 or 9 people living in who work at Tamdhu. So these are the Tamdhu houses. And this is the distillery manager's house here, bottom right-hand corner. And this here along the sort of left-hand side is the Speyside Way, which you can walk from there all the way into Aberlour and to other whiskey distilleries. So you can see it's not what I would call a thing of beauty, but it produces fabulous whiskey. So that was before we owned it. We now own it, and we've done a lot of investment to make the site different, but also to allow us to produce a great single malt. This is why we're here, though. The River Spey. This is just down from the distillery. That was on a beautiful morning about a year ago. I think I took that photo. The iconic Spey, we're genuinely Speyside. We're right beside it. So that's why you hear of Speyside whiskies. That's what we're talking about, the beautiful river. That's the mash tun. You can see it's quite a big distillery, 4 million litres. So that's about 12.8 tons of malt go in there for the mashing process. And then, of course, we've got the Oregon pine wash packs for our fermentation, which is around about 60 hours fermentation. This is a very fruity fermentation. We create a clearer wort, which allows us to go down that route of fruitiness. We use a yeast which promotes that fruitiness. And finally, that's the stills. And you can see there, big stills, quite a traditional shape, line arms that go down. And there's 3 sets. So there's also a set from where the picture was taken. Traditional shape, but again, it's about the stills and how we heat them is really, really important. And that's how we produce Tamdhu. Very big condensers. It's a big distillery, 4 million litres, probably 10 to 15% of that we're putting into sherry cask. The remaining 85%, we trade for grain whiskey. We trade for other single malts. We trade for a lot of other things to help us produce other aspects of our blended and blended malt portfolio. So I'll stop sharing that. Any questions on those photos? So David Stewart, you've been pretty much every side of Macallan. To the distilleries closest to Tamdhu, but not to Tamdhu itself, which is fine. And because you can't visit it, but you're right beside Tamdhu when you're at Cardiff. So I think this 12 has a little bit more, there's a little bit richer profile than the 10, I find. I've even got a little whiff of smoke off that. I'm not expecting that to be the case, but it's a beautiful whiskey, the 12. And we did that really because our profile of casks allowed us to change from 10 to 12. When we brought the 15 in, we thought, let's move from 10 to 12 because we've got a profile of casks in the longer term that allows us to make a 12-year-old better than a 10-year-old. So we did that. And this is at 43%. And this 12-year-old, I think, now is the entry point to the range. So the 10 is very difficult to find. So well found, whoever found it. But it's a brilliant, for me, step up from the 10-year-old. Beautiful whiskey. Again, all sherry casks, but that's not the true answer to the story. What is a sherry cask? I'm going to ask you guys. What does a sherry cask mean to you as whiskey consumers? What does it mean to you when I say a whiskey is sherry cask matured? What does that mean? Anybody?
Using barrels that held sherry.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the key thing to remember is that when I talk about sherry casks, I'm talking about casks that absolutely, just as Vadim said, has held Oloroso sherry before. These are not, they're very different to bourbon casks. Why? Well, I'll explain a little bit. Bourbon casks, obviously, heavily charred, filled with bourbon for 4 to 6 years, come to Scotland, Japan, Canada, everywhere else. So you're putting in bourbon at 60, 100, 120 proof, 125 proof into the barrel of a violently charred cask. That's why you get such wonderful colors in bourbon over 4 to 6 years. Bourbon is bottled and then we find, they come to Scotland. We use them. We get mellow vanillas and those type of flavors. Beautiful cask that works very, very well. Very consistent. Sherry casks come from Spain. That's the first thing to remember. And certainly from our perspective, they do. But that's really only half the story. When you fully mature in sherry, from start to finish, everything you drink now today is fully matured in sherry. Nothing is finished. These are not sherry cask finished whiskies. That's a really big point because it's an overused term. That now a lot of whiskies are sherry cask finished, and I enjoy them. I used to represent a whiskey that does a 15-year-old that's a sherry cask finish. Speaking to Jeff about this, Bowmore, very nice whiskey. Bowmore 15 sherry cask finished. 12 years in bourbon, 3 years in sherry, first fill. Beautiful whiskey. You're layering up that flavor of the bourbon Bowmore with that sherry cask style. When you finish a whiskey, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. When you finish a whiskey, you're looking a little bit, generally, you're looking a little bit more for the flavor of what was in the cask before. So you're looking for, a little bit of that sherry cask, the sherry that was in the oak is what you're looking to layer on top of. So we've just released a whiskey, one of our brands called Smokehead, which is an Islay whiskey, Tequila Terminado. So it's the first ever Islay whiskey, single malt, finished in tequila casks. Why not? Why not? Why, the world should be doing these types of things. And it's brilliant. We're launching that in the States next week. I'm not, luckily, but a colleague of mine is going to New York to launch that and doing some stuff. Brilliant whiskey. But why would you call a whiskey Tequila Terminado unless you can taste an element of that tequila? So we have a 6 to 9 month finish. We're getting a bit of that tequila flavor. So when you finish a whiskey, in general, that's what you're looking for, is a little bit of what was on top of that sort of was in that cask beforehand. Tamdhu's not like that, because Tamdhu we fully mature. Glengoyne, very similar. We fully mature. So we're tying these expensive $1,500 casks up from start to finish for 12 years. So we're tying these Oloroso sherry casks up for 12 years. And we use first fills and refills, but we're using 2 different types of oak, American oak and European oak. They're very, very different. And I'm going to show you how different they are. So here we have, and this is, I've drunk some of these, so these used to be higher, but they're not as high as they used to be. I've got 2 single casks here that we bottled about 4 or 5 years ago. Same age, pretty much identical strength. Both sherry casks, both very different color. Because this one is your Quercus alba, that's your American oak. Same cask, same oak used in bourbon casks. This one is European oak. And the reason they're different is they go through the same production process in Spain. The wood is imported into Spain from America. Same cask production, same sherry, same length of time. That is down to oak type. Why these casks are different. More of a sherry bomb here, more of a lighter style whiskey here. And that's how we then combine these together to make every Tamdhu. And we use them in different ways. So the 12, we use a little bit more of the American oak. And when we get to the 15, we use a little bit more of the European oak. So it's a wonderful example of how the oak is crucial. It's oak that ultimately matures whiskey. That's why you get color. It's why you get flavor. So what that does show, if it shows nothing else, it's not sherry that colors whiskey, it's oak. And that's a really important aspect of this. So what would we get in this? We would get a lot of those in the European, in the American oak. Yeah, vanilla. It's full of vanillin. Some more of those vanilla lighter flavors, a bit more of what we're picking up in the 12 here. When we come to the 15, you're going to see a little bit more of these flavors coming through, more darker, richer, you know, sort of dark fruit flavors coming through. And that's the beauty of the casks that we use. It's all about the oak type, European or American. So that's a little summation of why casks are so important. But when we combine them together, we only use 3 things at Tamdhu. Tony Nicoletti has just absolutely summed it up. If you've ever been to Glengoyne, the display at Glengoyne sums up what I'm talking about here beautifully in terms of the different types of casks and the color. It's so important when you produce naturally colored whiskey. Glengoyne, a completely different distillery, but it's using the same type of casks as we use because we get them from the same suppliers in Spain. So this 12, when you nose it, there's a lightness to it. There's a lovely little bit of that vanilla sweetness when you drink it. But, oh, wow. It's 20 to 4 in the morning and I'm loving drinking whiskey. Let me tell you, this is great. Lovely sweetness at the front of the palate, gentle spice, but it's beautifully rounded, sweet coming through, a little bit of that richer sherry at the back, very smooth. This is what we call in Scotland a session whiskey, which means that you can drink a bottle of it quite quickly with a couple of friends if you're on a session. It's beautiful though, really, really gorgeous. That's a great picture from Jason. You can see that in the chat. Just shows you the different colors of whiskey that we get from casks. Now Glengoyne's a different distillery, but you could do a very similar display on the 2 far right hand side windows in that picture. Great picture. Any questions on the 12? What do we think of the 12 and its difference to the 10?
Gordon, is this unchill filtered?
Not at 43, no. The 15 will be at 46, as will the distinction that we're going to have and the batch strength. But I think we're really lucky at, if we think of chill filtration, it's the last thing you do before you put it in the bottle. Arguably, you lose a little bit of mouthfeel if that's genuinely what people say. But I think because we've got so much character in the spirit, because we really take our time to do it, then I don't think Tamdhu particularly suffers from it. I think if you have a spirit that's not quite as flavoursome, you'll see more of that. But for me, both Glengoyne and Tamdhu aren't as affected by chill filtration, and look, it's important in certain aspects. So beautiful whiskey though, the 12, and I think there's a poise to it, there's a lightness to it, there's a welcome to Tamdhu come and try Tamdhu type sort of style to it, which is really, really interesting. And it's certainly I really enjoy this 12-year-old, and it's probably obviously the most widely available of them all. Anybody got a thought? I'm gonna ask anybody want to comment? Anybody got a comment on this?
I was actually going to ask about the whole idea of full maturation and sherry cask, because you get some, like with the 12 and with the 10, it's the sherry influence. It's subtle, but the character of the distillate comes through really well.
Yeah.
Whereas some others that I've had that are fully sherry matured are just literal. There's some of the distillate, but it becomes almost a sherry bomb. I mean, depending on the level. So what explains the differences in how much of the sherry comes through during a full maturation? So if you've got a 12-year, you've got a 15-year, both have been in sherry casks their entire lives.
Yeah.
But there's vastly different flavor profiles.
It's a very, very good question, Jason. And it all comes down to, remember, most single malts, whether a 12, a 15, an 18 or whatever, are a marriage of casks. They're casks from all one distillery being married together. And it comes down to the profile of casks that you have. So you can make a sherry whiskey all from refill casks, and it would be very light and not very dominant, and you'd have a lot of spirit character coming through. The refill casks are really important. You know, we think of bourbon and they're always using brand new casks, but actually what's really important is that when you use refill casks, you're allowing more of that spirit character to come through. That is very apparent in this whiskey, the 12. I could make a whiskey, a 12-year-old whiskey that's this color only. And I just use all first fill casks and big, bold flavors. The amount of, as you use more first fill, the amount of spirit character comes down. So it sort of works on that profile. But when you're producing a single malt, you've got to get the flavor. You've got to get the flavor of the spirit coming through, however you blend it together, for want of that. So I think that's a really important. It's all about your stock profile, what you're trying to produce, what you want to produce. We produce a whiskey, which is a very limited edition, which we sold out in a day this year, called the Dalby Alley, which celebrates the station at Tamdhu. And if I can find a picture, I'll show you. We did that for the Spirit of Speyside. 60% alcohol, no age statement, younger than the 12, around about a 10-year-old, but it's that color for a 10-year-old whiskey. So firstly, let's dispel the myth that color and age is a thing. It's not. It's all about the first fill types of casks that you use, or the oak type. It's all European oak. It's big, it's bold, it's dry, it's a little bit dry. It's 60% alcohol. It's a sherry bomb. It's a sherry bomb, but there's still Tamdhu in it. But there you go. The youngest whiskey we can produce a really dark whiskey. We can produce more subtle whiskeys as we get older. And what you want to do is remember that when you mature, casks give color very quickly, and then they plateau. So if you studied that picture that Jason has put up, you actually see the color in the first 10 to 15 years, which is in the top. Color comes in, and then it basically plateaus, and then you lose volume out the cask, and you get oxidative aging. Air is beginning to make its impact on the whiskey. So it's not linear. It's like a tea bag. Tea bags stop giving flavor after a while. So it's a bit like that for casks. So all those things come into the dynamic of, that's the Dalby Alley that we released. Yeah. Look at that. So that's all sold out, 60% alcohol. Probably about, it was £100 a bottle, probably about, probably about a 10-year-old, and just so popular. Probably one of the hardest bottles to get in Scotch whiskey.
So this looks amazing. I was going to ask you about this today. This looks absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
And on here it says bottles will be available for purchase internationally from June. And I was going to say,
not the US, unfortunately.
Oh, we're not international. All right, I see.
No, you absolutely are international. Of course you are. We can't legally send whiskey to the US.
Oh,
as an individual purchaser, sorry. So, you know, it's illegal for us to send whiskey to the US. We can obviously ship it because we have to ship it for, you know, because of the 3-tier system that you have in the US, which I think is Mike will tell you the ins and outs and the beauties of that system. But the geographical nature of it and the way your states work means that we can't ship direct to the US, unfortunately.
And this won't be in the
What you all
distribution
need,
chain.
sorry?
This will not be in the distribution chain in the US.
No, it will not. There's only 1,000 bottles. It's all sold out.
How many casks is that? 1,000 bottles is what? 2 casks?
Probably could be 2 or 3. It could be 2 butts. It could be 3 hogs, 3 or 4 hogsheads, 3 hogsheads. So
And 60% is brought down to 60? I'm guessing
no,
that's not
that's
that,
the
right?
strength. That's the strength.
Okay.
So that was what we released. That celebrates the station. But the 12, you know, it all is all about taking those similar casks and using them in a different way. And that's really, really important in terms of a whiskey that a wider sphere of people could, because not everybody can drink 60% alcohol whiskey straight off the bat. Although I was managing to drink quite a lot of it last week, if I'm honest. Any questions on the 12? Oh, beautiful. Did that answer your question, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Good,
Appreciate
good.
that.
Because sometimes I just burble on, and I want to make sure I answer your question. So, anybody else got a question on? So the point is, I can if we just use refill casks, and this is going to be highlighted by the next whiskey. If I just use refill sherry casks, and particularly refill American oak sherry casks, put it in a bottle, and I sent it all to you, and I said nothing to you about it, you possibly might all think it was a bourbon cask, because you're not getting any. The color has all been used in the first film, depending on how long we used it, and the color maturation is quite light. You're not getting big flavors from the oak. But you will get nuances, and you may generally think, because that's the way we think, our eyes will go, that looks like bourbon cask color. You might not think it was a sherry cask color, which leads us on to whiskey, our next whiskey, which is this one here. Distinction. What is distinction? Well, I think there's a real confusion about sherry casks. And it's something we have absolutely tried to address, I think, as a brand, because I think cask maturation and how it works is still quite confusing to people. And I'm just about to put a link into the chat of our video that we produced, which, if you really want to understand about sherry cask whiskies, I'm just going to suggest that you have a look at this. This is I'll just share the link with you. This is one of the most amazing parts of my job. Is I'm just sending that in the chat now. Please copy that link and have a look at it. It's on YouTube. What's amazing about this was I went to Spain 5 years ago to do this film. I can't believe it was 5 years ago. I actually can't believe it was 5 years ago. Might have to go back. I've forgotten it all. And the first thing that struck me about Spain, has anybody been to Spain? Well, the first thing that struck me about Spain is tomatoes there are fabulous. They taste of something. Because our tomatoes in the UK taste of nothing. Tomatoes in Spain, they taste of something. It's fabulous. It's known for a few other things, Spain, but that was the thing. Beautiful, beautiful place to go. We went to the north of Spain and we cut down a European oak tree. And we went through the whole process. It's in this film. We went through the whole process of how a cask is made. But what struck me about Spain was that, you know, the way these two oaks are prepared is exactly the same. The amount of sherry that's put in them, Oloroso sherry, for 2 years, seasoned, sitting in that cask. But we have American oak casks and we have European oak casks. When people think of sherry casks, they think of it, oh, it's going to be this style of whiskey. Distinction, this next whiskey, Distinction, absolutely dispels that myth of what we've actually just been talking about when I answered Jason's question. This is the antithesis of what you've just seen on your screen. Dalby Alley Dram is a no age statement European oak whiskey. This is a no age statement American oak sherry cask whiskey. Look at the color of that. Look at the color of that compared to even this single cask, which is, you know, and that just shows you what we're trying to produce here. You could tell that this is going to be a very different sherry cask experience. So this is Quercus alba, which is American oak. Distinction, all about distinctively showing you one side of our maturation for Tamdhu. So when you nose it, the first thing I nose is like a little bit of this wonderful, there's a vanilla aspect and sweetness to this. Jeff seems to get a hint of sulfur. Absolutely, whatever. I don't particularly get that, but I get this absolutely. So this is Distinction, just to be clear. This is the third whiskey, 48%. Should have this lovely floral, sort of beautiful sort of sweetness that comes through. There's no rich, heavy flavors here. This is the light side of sherry cask maturation, and that's what Quercus alba brings. That's what American oak brings. It's a tighter grain. It brings a very different flavors because of the vanillins in the wood compared to the tannins in the European oak. So we tasted it last week. We have a 63-year-old Tamdhu in a cask at Tamdhu. 63 years in a sherry hogshead, and it's dark. It's that color. 63. I'm like, why 63? You nosed it, and it's got this cornucopia of flavors, of dark fruit flavors. Beautiful. You taste it. Initially, there's this gorgeous richness, and mouthfeel is amazing, and it's one of the, and then it just goes whoop, and the tannins have overpowered it. It dries your mouth out, and you're like, and your sort of mouth just goes, and you need water. It just sucks the dryness out your mouth. So we never use that as a single malt, unfortunately, because it's just not of the quality that we need. But that is European oak to an extreme. And I saw, who was it earlier that I saw? I think it was maybe Ian Anderson. I think it might have been Ian, had a Pappy Van Winkle background, was it? I think it might have been Ian. And you know, it's quite interesting because a lot of Pappy Van Winkle whiskies, I know the Van Winkles well. They're good friends of mine. And I find some of their older whiskies are a little bit over oak. They're quite oaky. They're quite full on. But Van Winkle, amazing. You know, it's a style of bourbon that not everybody's, you know, it's quite cask orientated bourbon at the older ages. But that's what this 63 is like. What you have here is this fresh, fruity whiskey, allowing that oak to, there we go. Well, it was a sort of Pappy Van Winkle, but it's his own take on it, I think. So yeah, I just was recognizing the background there. This is a fresh, vibrant young whiskey, which is really, yeah, there's some beautiful notes here. Absolutely bright. It's alive. But maybe if I hadn't told you you're a whiskey tasting where it's all about Oloroso sherry cask whiskeys, you may think this was a bourbon cask. You know, it's got some of those major characteristics. But what I love about this is there's a real vibrancy to this, which you to be honest, you don't get so much in European oak. Much richer, darker flavors. So the Dalby Alley and this, the whiskey that we just saw, are as far apart. You know, they're both at one end of the Tamdhu spectrum, and everything else we make is somewhere in the middle. And that's the really interesting point. So one person described it beautifully in terms of, you get European oaks quite jaggy and quite rich and quite sort of, you know, sort of clings as it goes down in a really nice way. When you add in a bit of American oak matured Oloroso, it fills in the gaps, rounds it all off. I think you see that you'll see that in the 15 for sure as we come on to that. But you see that in this whiskey as well. There's a beautiful vibrancy alive. There's lots of spirit character. There's lovely maturation in here. it's a summery style whiskey, whereas something like the Dalby Alley, technically, if you were drinking that after dinner in a snowstorm in Alaska, you'd be like, well, this is the great whiskey for that point. So again, what do we think of this one, guys? I'm going to go around asking people because you're all quite quiet, really. Amanda F.
I really enjoyed that one. I get the vanilla in it too, but I gets like a little bit of like earthy tannins in it too. I get some earthiness on the nose. And like this, I think Vicky mentioned too, like also, but like that mocha-y flavor. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is, you know, at 48%, if you add a drop of water to this, you're going to see a real increase in sweetness. You're going to see a real increase in that buttery style around the palate. Really lovely whiskey if you and always should consider adding water to whiskey, but at 48%, you're going to see that this whiskey really change when you add 1 drop of water. Fabulous. Thank you. Let's speak to, is it Kate Hennigan?
Yeah.
Hi, Kate. How are you? Where are you?
Good enough. I'm here in the LA area.
Oh, nice.
I'm just I don't know, what do you call it? On the pig's back, as we say in Irish. Anyway, I'm loving it. I'm just in hog heaven.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not going to give you all these great tasting notes that everybody else in the group tells you.
You don't need to, as long as you're enjoying it.
I'm just going to tell you I love it. I love all of them. And
well,
I really enjoyed the 10 as well,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate that it's that you've taken it out of your stable.
You still might be able to find it somewhere. I'm not sure.
I've actually already checked. I can find it right here down the street from me, but it's too bad that you removed it from your stables because it's real different from your 12, but it's very enjoyable.
No, the 10 is a fabulous whiskey. I absolutely agree. But yeah, no, having a 10 and a 12 is a little odd, but yeah, I agree. Let's go to Tony. Tony's got a back wall to die for. Is that in your house, Tony?
I wish it was. That's a local bar here in Pensacola that's been written up in several magazines.
Oh, right. No, I'm going to have to go to Pensacola. That's quite a long way from LA, though.
Yeah, about 3,000 miles.
Nice. Fantastic. What do you think of the whiskey so far?
I like them all. This distinction is, as you said earlier, would be a session whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're going to just sit down, chat with some friends, and all of a sudden the bottle's gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these are quite sessionable whiskies in terms of their style. They are a lighter, fruitier style, which, you know, generally you can drink a little bit more of if you want to. Obviously, we need to drink responsibly, but yes, completely agree. Yeah, as long as, I mean, I think the point is you can have a really light sherry cask whiskey or a sherry cask whiskey that promotes that spirit, that lightness. They don't all have to be sherry bombs. However, we do love the odd sherry bomb to give us that rich, thick style.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous. Anybody else got a comment they want to make on this? Jeff?
Okay, so there's not enough peat in here, number one.
There's none, really.
But yeah, so far I would go back to the 12 over the other two.
Okay.
I mean, I just got a mouthful of apricots and malt in that thing that I'm not, this distinction, I think that sulfur note that I got initially maybe was just, I don't know, some funky maltiness or something, but it doesn't show up in the palate. So
yeah. No, I mean, look, clearly there's not enough peat for you. You just want, but it's quite subtle smokiness. So, we're off the wall. It's quite an impressive wall. Ah, yeah, Octomore. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, that's the most heavily peated whiskey you can buy. But yes, yeah, I mean, we're not the antithesis of that. Probably something like Auchentoshan is, but you know, we do use a little peat, but it's all about the cask flavors from a Tamdhu perspective, spirit style. Now, I love peated whiskies, but you know, the one thing you notice is when you first smell or nose a peated whiskey, that's what you smell is the peat. That's what people love. And what you find is that actually, or Michael Anderson's going, no, it's not what he loves. That's the beauty of this product. But when you nose a peated whiskey, that's what you pick up. Now, those smells are great, but they actually mask some wonderful flavors that might be in the spirit, which is why when you see older Islay whiskies like Bowmore and like Lefroy, they become tropical fruit whiskies with very little peat. Bowmore in its older ages is really well known for its tropical fruit notes. It's, I mean, I've been lucky to drink 40, 50-year-old Bowmores, some of the finest whiskies I've ever drunk. Beautiful, beautiful. Very little peat in them by that point, of course.
If Jeff needs more peat, I got a bag out behind the garage he can have.
I think Jeff might have peat for breakfast. He loves the stuff. Brilliant, guys. I mean, I think, you know, really interesting to get your views on these whiskies because, you know, Tamdhu does just deliver sherry casks. And, you know, I think what we strive for is to be, you know, dedicated to producing that. That's what we do. That's why we do it. We have no intention of veering off from that. And we've made Tamdhu really has in the last 5 years sort of said to those other sherry cask whiskies, Aberlour, Glendronach, Glenfarclas, we've added whiskies now into our range that people who drink those fabulous whiskies, all of them fabulous whiskey, are going, oh, I need to try that Tamdhu. That's utterly fabulous. That's a really, you know, our challenge is we don't have the stocks at the moment to cover the demand for Tamdhu. You know, in Asia, people die for Tamdhu because it's wonderful color and it's rich flavors, and they're very keen on that out there. So it's certainly something which we are we can't address. We have to wait till it's ready. That's the slight problem with whiskey, but it's a nice problem to have.
Gordon,
So yes.
I have a question. You said that you use the a yeast that brings out the floral flavors, but you also said that you you know you hold it at the boiling point of alcohol for quite some time. And what is it? How is it that maybe this is too much chemistry, but how is it that you get this product doing those things? I mean, like Glenmorangie, we know that part of how they get the flavor is they have those amazing long
giraffe
necks.
stills,
right. And we've heard from other producers how they coax the flavor out. What is it exactly about that's bringing out these flavors, which are wonderful, by the way, as I said before?
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of let's think about distillation first. That's the beauty of making Scotch whiskey is that we all use the same ingredients, but we all use them in a slightly different way. So let's start with peat. Poof, let's put that to one side. You can peat your barley and you get peated whiskey many years later. Fantastic. Great. We're not really talking about that here. Yes, Tamdhu is very, 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 and another 10 very lightly peated. But it's not, you would never put it in a peated category. So how do we generate flavor? The first thing we do, and I'm going to get a little bit technical for a couple of minutes here, in the mashing process, that's where we're obviously using our grist with water. It's all about how you extract that wort that's created through that process. So you don't want that wort to drain through the bottom of the mash tun too quickly, because then you're taking too many of the solids that we don't want. You could create a more cloudy wort. If you want to have a clearer wort, which is taking you down the route of sort of fruit. If you have a cloudy wort, you could be more into nutty type flavors. Then you use your underback. It's a simple gravity thing that how you balance it off so it just seeps out. It's not draining out really quickly. So you've not got too much of the flowers and those types of things within the wort. So that's the first thing. You then ferment, obviously, in Oregon pine washbacks, which have minimal impact at all. if I'm honest. But you add in a yeast which is being developed to promote that style of whiskey, that style of whiskey that we want. And then finally, where you totally take those 2 steps, it's like rolling a snowball down a hill that slowly gets bigger. Start off small, you do it right here. So that's the mashing, then the fermentation. There would be no point then just to put it through the stills as quickly as you could, because that is not going to help the stills and the copper and the reflux happen that helps further you promote that fruity characteristic in whiskey. So not every whiskey has this style. You go to some whiskeys, get a waxiness. Let's think of Clynelish and its waxy style. That's what they're known of. Mortlach, it's like very different. Other whiskies have slightly different styles of spirit because of their still shape. So it's the combination of the aspects that you do in that 3-stage process, and then you mature to make your whiskey. So without getting too technical, you've got to let the copper do its work to reinforce what you've done in the 2 stages before. That means don't overheat it. My mum told me one thing about cooking. Well, she was a very good cook. She is a very good cook. I'm not a great cook. But she said to me, well, she's told me a few things about cooking, but she did say to me, never boil soup. And I'm like, oh, you just simmer soup. Just keep it simmering. Don't boil it because you'll start to lose flavor. Similar sort of thing with whiskey, if I'm honest. You know, if you just run that, you know, you put that soup in a, you know, and you put it in a pan, turn it up full heat and leave it, and you go back to it, it will be less flavorsome at that point than if you'd been simmering it over a longer period of time, because you've not allowed it's a similar concept. You've got to allow the copper to do its work, to do the reflux, to do the extractive, taking out the things you don't want. And actually, you know, that's what's really important. So that's why Glenmorangie's really tall stills, such a long way from the pot to the top, that they get lots of copper contact. And so that's why they have their style. So there's a lot of things coming into it, Kate. Shall we move on to the 15? You've all moved on to the 15. So 15, here we go. So a little bit darker in color now. We're seeing a little bit of European oak sherry cask coming through here because we're using more. So the darkness in the color, nothing to do with the fact that it is oldest, nothing to do. Color has no correlation to age. There, I've said it.
How many times are you using the casks?
We'll use them probably to pet. So we use, obviously, our first fill casks come directly from Spain, and you can see all that in that movie. So please do watch it. We probably use them up to 2 times, maybe 3. So if you've used a cask to fill up the 10-year-old, that cask will still have quite a lot to give in its refill. So if you then used it again for another 10 years or 12 years, you might use it for a 3rd time. If you use the first cask for 12 or for 20 or 30 years, you've got a very different refill cask. So it depends on the length of time, effectively, that it's been used.
Does anyone use Hungarian oak? I know of some companies, but that's not very common in sherry production, right?
No, no. I mean, European oak actually covers a lot of countries these days, and can be, you know, found across large parts of Europe. Most of our casks are actually Spanish oak. So from northern Spain, 99.9. I can't say 100% because sometimes we take a little bit of oak from southern France, but it's all from that southern France, northern Spain area, which is if you think about that, might be a variety of oak, but it's growing in a very different environment to somewhere like Hungary or somewhere like Romania or somewhere like, you know, across Europe. So we get ours is nearly 100% Spanish oak, but you can get oak from anywhere. You can use oak from any style of oak.
And that would be Quercus robur.
Quercus robur is European oak.
Okay.
There's another one called Quercus petrea, which is used a lot in wine casks and things as well. Slight different variation, but we're using Quercus robur, but from Spain, so Spanish grown Quercus robur.
So it has a little bit of a lift.
Well, I mean, it's quite a different environment. So the oak is a little bit different in terms of the soil and all, and the water and all that, and the sun. So it grows in a slightly different way. So you might get a slight, you know, you take a tree from northern Spain and one from the same variety, and put them and grow them. They're not identical. That's why you get casks doing all these beautiful different things. So the 15, 46% non-chill filtered, natural color. Beautiful. Does the spice come from the sherry cask? That's a good question. Not necessarily. Can do, but not necessarily. I'll come back to that. So now I think we're moving more into a after dinner style whiskey. This is more your, I would drink this at after dinner. Distinction, I would drink it at a barbecue in the summer. This is the after dinner whiskey. This is you moving into, oh yeah, where's the chocolate? Where's the coffee? Where's the cigar? Where's that type of whiskey? I find this a little bit, it's got a little bit of absolutely spiced oranges. Yeah, there's a little bit of that before, during, after dinner. Absolutely. But there's a richness from the European oak. There's a richness from these first fill casks coming in now. And there's a real change in profile on the palate. So the sweetness of distinction, the juicy sweetness of distinction has now turned to more dried fruits a little bit. It's moving further back in the palate as well. So I find the sweetness is not at the front, it's now in the back half of the palate. Beautiful, beautiful whiskey, this. Gentle dryness, a little bit of tannin. Beautiful sort of combination of those. There's still a bit of that Tamdhu flavor in there. Absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, these are scary to drink, because I think Tamdhu is very Moorish in any form. And this 15, when we released it, no debate it was going to be at 46. No debate it's going to have more European oak influence. Fabulous. Absolutely gorgeous. But I love this as I mean, it's 4:15 in the morning. I'm loving this whiskey. It's perfect. It's just what I want at this time. I'm going to get up at 4:15 every morning and have a Tamdhu 15. But I mean, it's just a really, really lovely example of a little bit more, you know, if you pick this up and you gave it to people, most people out of the 4 whiskeys we've had, most people go, that's a sherry cask. Oh, sherry cask whiskey. It is absolutely, absolutely luscious, gorgeous, rich, but beautifully balanced as well. It all works together. Yeah, if you smoke a cigar, we do a cigar malt as well. That's going to be more of that richer style. So yeah, of course, you're going to get a little more hint of that sort of, you get a little bit more tannins, a little bit more spice occasionally from European oak, but it's not all out of kilter. There's a lovely balance to this whiskey. What do we think, everybody? Shane, you're in a warehouse, you're in a rack house there, Shane. What's happening? What do you think of that?
Just had to unmute for a second. Before dinner, during dinner, after dinner, fantastic. No, you know what I did want to say thank you for getting up so early, you know, where you're at to be on with us. It's been fabulous. I mean, the educational, I loved what you were sharing. I mean, throughout the presentation, talking about the influence and the importance of the cask. And then with Jason's picture that he had from you know, from the other distillery, that was great to see that balance. But I've loved all the expressions. As actually the first time I've had Tamdhu, surprisingly. It's been on my list for quite a long time, and this 15 is fabulous. I mean, they're all great. I could enjoy all of them, but definitely the 15 is my jam, and I could drink this all night long. So so great job. Thank you, Gordon.
No, thank you, Shane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. No, enjoy the rack house. I'm very jealous. David, you know, Stewart. Sorry.
Screensavers are great, right?
No, they are. I've not got one, but yeah, I should have one. But anyway, David, you've got a lovely cabinet there. Hello.
Hello. Yes. Hi. This is a month old only.
Oh, really? It's beautiful.
Yeah, everything was jammed in on shelves and wrapped up for earthquake safety until this just got installed a month ago. So
Wow, it looks amazing. Congratulations. What do you think of the whiskeys?
I like them all very much. This is the first time I've had Tamdhu. Well, I've been next door at Cardew and down the road at McAllen.
Yeah.
This is the first experience I've had with Tamdhu. I was out at a party last night and overindulged a little bit. So I've only had the 10-year and the distinction tonight.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to sip everything. Already got a bit of a headache. But I'm looking forward to the last one in the list. So, but
All
the
right.
distinction of the 10 and the distinction, I like that distinction quite a bit. So
Okay, good. Thanks for that, David. And I'm glad you're enjoying the Tamdhu even after a few drams last night.
I would think that a little hair of the dog would be helping you right now.
That's never been my experience.
Okay, yeah. Well, all the best. I think the last whiskey might sort you out completely.
I think the answer is you have to do it at 4 a.m. That's the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I work in a business where it's legit. I was in the office today, and this is an odd part of what I do at 4 a.m. But I work in a business where it's legitimate to sit at your desk at 11 a.m. going. You could be, because we work in a whiskey business, so nobody would look at you and go, "What's he doing?" Yeah, we drink. We're all nosing and sampling samples at 10, 11 in the morning because that's about the best time for you to do it from a palate perspective. So I'm every time I'm in the office. I'm joking, not every time, but we're always looking at whiskeys and spirits and things like that. So, anybody else got any comments before we move on? I'm going to talk even a little bit more about casks shortly. Got some more pictures potentially to show you as well. Sort of forgotten about that aspect of. Hold on. Any other questions? So one thing I just wanted to show you is I'm just going to show you a little bit of this. Hold on. Of what I said to you about, I'm going to share this if I can. It's not brilliantly set up, but I want to just show you a little video about what I was talking about. I don't know if I've put the sound on. How have I put the sound on? Oh, I put the sound on more. Oh, I don't know. Oh, share sound. There we go. Hold on. So I'm going to put this in full screen. And I just want to play this for you because this is from the film link that this is a little bit more detailed, but it's from the link that I shared. Let's see if you can get this. Can you hear it all?
Yep.
Good. So I've arrived in the heart of Speyside at Tamdhu Distillery, and I'm here to see Sandy. We're going to talk about the wonderful spirit he produces here and why it suits those magical sherry casks that we get from Spain.
Gordon, great to see you.
How are you? Great to be back.
Oh yeah, we've been missing getting people up here to Speyside.
We're going to have a look round the distillery.
Yeah, let's go and see what's happening in the distillery, then we'll go and actually have a wee look at some casks.
So this is the distillery. You can see we're off into the warehouses. This was a tough day, as you can imagine. There's the mash tun. So obviously fermentation, beautifully fruity at this stage. But you can see,
I'm really intrigued to get your opinion on your new make spirit and why it really suits these sherry casks that we get from Spain.
Well, Tamdhu, as you know, produces a fruity new make spirit. That's the character that we produce here all the time. It's one of the more difficult ones to actually produce, but that in itself, what we do in the milling, the mashing, the fermentation, and right through here to the stills, the different characteristics that we can adjust in the process there allows us to produce this really intense new make fruity spirit. It's bursting out the bottle to get at you. It really, come and get me, come and get me. And that's before we've even started to put it in the casks.
And I would imagine that fruity spirit maturing full term in these casks for a 12 or 15 really shows you when you taste them, you get that beautiful balance.
Sometimes a distillery loses its character, or the character diminishes whilst it's in the cask, and you lose some of that distinction from the actual distillery itself. But with the fruitiness in Tamdhu, it's still in the final spirit. Absolutely. And it's come all the way through the maturation process.
Should we go to the warehouse?
Let's go for it. We've got it.
So what have we got here, Sandy? This looks like a butt to me.
Sherry butt from one of our suppliers in Spain, Huberto de Make. The Cooper Forest family business out there. It's European oak. It's a 4-year-old, so it's relatively young. But let's have a wee sample of it. Can I ask you to hold on to that for me?
4 years old.
Oh, nice. Thanks very much. Oh, look at the colour.
And that just shows you what you can get after 4 years in a sherry cask.
4 years old.
This whiskey's far short of becoming a Tamdhu yet. Although it is whiskey, it's not going to be in any of our products for many, many years, is it?
No, this could be sitting here for 12, 15, 18, 21, 25, maybe even 50 years. Who knows? But look at the colour that's come into it. When in there is clear liquid, you make spirit from the safe we saw earlier on. And look at the colour it's developed in the 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's got lots of colour, but there's still got that maturity to come through, which we'll see in the, you know, our 12s and our 15s and all those products as we produce them.
Definitely. But what I want you to pick up from it is we've still got that distillery character there, that fruitiness that's coming from the still side of things, the distillation side of things, but it's coming in, marrying up with these sherry casks.
So we taste.
This was a really tough day.
Still a young spirit. You know, so there is still maybe some of that harshness there, but we haven't lost any of the distillery character at all.
But there's a real back sort of richness coming from that cask.
I'm getting Oloroso all the way with it, actually. Sherry, sherry, sherry.
From the perspective of people who drink Tamdhu, it's all about the way that we mature it full term in these casks. Everything that you have a 12 or a 15, it's all about the full maturation, which means you're getting the full benefit of that time in that cask.
Very much so, very much so. Cheers. Enjoy.
Cheers.
So just a little movie that we did to show how important these casks are and why they, and that is further enhanced in what you will see in the film that I shared earlier in the chat. Let's move on to the batch strength, which is our sort of whiskey that I think is going to take us to another level. So we've had the strongest whiskey we've had today is 48 for distinction. We're on a lot higher than that. I think you're on batch strength number 6. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I don't actually have batch strength number 6 here, so I've got another one that I'm going to enjoy. So I can't remember what strength you are at.
Somebody's got a bottle in front of them.
56.8.
56.8. So I'm on batch strength number 4 at 57.6. So
By the way,
we'll
the
enjoy them.
font on these and the color combinations makes it nearly impossible to read the ABVs on these things.
That is very true. You need to look at it. It's a bit like trying to read a number on a credit card. Yeah, I agree. But we'll change that. So batch strength series, we're on batch strength 007 at the moment. I think you've got 006. Every single one we have a variation on a theme. What this allows our blending team to do is to use various amounts of American and European oak in different percentages, first fills and refills. The other thing that I've not even spoken about is cask sizes as well. We have sherry butts, which are 500 liters, sherry puncheons, which are pretty similar in size, but a different shape. Sherry hogsheads are half the size. So those are the 3 sizes. They're all bigger than a bourbon barrel at 200 liters. So we would use variations on those as well to give different intensities, because you would get a more intense whiskey in a smaller cask than you would in a sherry butt over time. So the Tamdhu batch strength is called batch strength because it is not cask strength. We have added a dribble of water to these. Why? Well, some of them, some of the casks that we use for these were filled at filling strength. So they were filled at 63.5, but some of the casks were actually filled at spirit strength, which would be 69, 70% alcohol back in the day.
Is that allowed?
So,
I was going to say, is that allowed? I thought
yeah, it
they...
is. Yeah. I mean, most whiskeys all fill at 63.5% now, but back then you could fill at that strength. You could fill at any strength particularly, but the reason you would fill at that was not because of any real whiskey making reason. It was more to save on casks and warehouse space, so you could get more spirit in a cask, and you would use less casks,
and then water it down after.
Yeah, and then water it down afterwards. So that was very much the reason. But now pretty much the industry fills at 63.5% because there's been some research in terms of how that works in terms of extraction, color generation, and things like that. So that's when you normally find a 10-year-old cask strength whiskey is about 58, 50, 55, 57% because it's been filled at 63.5. These were all higher than that. So we've reduced these with a little bit of water to what you would maybe think is closer to a cask strength. So this is a high strength whiskey. Again, the first thing I love about this whiskey is that it doesn't nose of the strength that it is. It's 56.8. It doesn't nose of 112, 113 proof. It really is a sort of, for me, the nose is all about flavor from the cask. There's lots of flavor generation here. There's lots of, there's not a huge amount of age. It's probably it's probably in about the 10-year category. But if you look in the market, who produces a fully matured in sherry cask strength whiskey, you can count them on about one hand. I mean, Aberlour Abuna is probably one of the most famous. Great whiskey, Aberlour Abuna. But what we're seeing up, David's got some Aberlour Abuna in his beautiful shelf. This is the next whiskey, but people are now going, oh, I drink Aberlour Abuna, but my God, Tamdhu batch strengths are fabulous and a nice alternative, a nice style difference of sherry cask, full sherry cask maturation. So I love Abuna. I think it's a great whiskey. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful whiskey. But Tamdhu batch strength does something a little bit different for that type of whiskey drinker. So at 56%, I don't think I'm ever going to add a huge amount of water to this, but absolutely there's a creaminess to this. There's a roundness to it. It's a beautiful example of high strength sherry cask whiskey that has got a lot of that influence, but I still possibly wouldn't even call this a sherry bomb. We could make a sherry bomb if we wanted. It's not a bomb. It's got flavor and poise and balance to it. This is gorgeous. This is great dramming, great drams. I should sleep very well when I go back to bed, I think. But yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous whiskey. And the batch strength series come in a beautiful white box. Have I got one here? No. I don't know, but it comes in a beautiful white box. And we're about to release batch strength number 8. And it again will be a slight variation on what we've spoken about. So if you like, there we go. Thank you, Vadim. If you like high strength sherry cask whiskey, this is about one of your only options, and it's a fabulous option in the marketplace. Beautiful, beautiful box, beautiful whiskey. So Tamdhu is really, really anchored itself now in that sherry cask sort of arena. But due to the stock profile which we have, which is literally like this, we released we don't even really have 20-year-old whiskey yet. So we really don't have a whiskey which we have got that we have on a regular basis at higher ages than about 18 at the moment. So it's a great problem to have, but to find Tamdhu, you'll find it obviously in the LA area. You'll find it across America, but it is available, but it's never going to be widely available. I think, Mike, you would agree with that. Is that fair?
Yeah, correct. I think those specialty, shops in LA, we're talking about K&L and Mission, High Times, just those niche shops that have a large selection will work with us, but we don't have a whole lot of it.
No, we don't. That's the problem. We don't have lots of Tamdhu. I was discussing it with the brand director today, and he was going, yeah, I mean, maybe in 3 or 4 more years we'll have a little bit more stock, but at the moment we only have the stock that we have. So every market is on allocation.
Mike, you got to stop off at show Remedy some love. They have a bunch of your expressions and they're all sold out.
Yeah, I was in there. I was talking with them last week. That's a great retailer for us too. I should say that the 15-year, that is when that goes away, it's replaced with the Tamdhu 18. So we've got a few cases kind of left in the States. They're no longer shipping us any more 15. So once it goes through the pipeline, then we kind of graduate up to the 18.
Oh,
Beautiful
there's a
blue,
bottle of 18.
blue label.
Somebody's got some 18, I think.
Yeah, so some people are gonna have some 18, some people are gonna have some cigar. We sent out samples kind of sporadically to people to try.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a little bit out there. And at the end of tonight, for those of you who are here, we're gonna do our little randomizer wheel, and some people are gonna win some samples as well. We're gonna have some fun with that.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I like a randomizer wheel. Can I get involved?
Yes, you can.
That sounds great.
Only if
yeah,
you cover
so
the shipping to Scotland.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. So so there is an 18. It's very limited. It takes what you've got. It takes you on a journey from the 12s. You saw the journey from the 12 to the 15. The increase in European oak. The 18 takes that further. I've got the 18 here. That's
Gordon,
the 18.
While I have everyone on the call, Shane just disappeared. If you don't mind, if I'm just going to take a second and say thank you to you and have everyone raise a glass. Oh, there we go. I got everyone on camera. It's a rare occasion. We got 100% participation. So we want to say thank you to you making the time and being here with us and spending this night, early morning, late evening with us. So cheers to you. Cheers to Tamdhu. And thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Flanja.
I'm gonna have another dram. I'm feeling good. This is the thing to do at 4 a.m. You should all try it.
So, well, you assume we haven't tried it yet. I mean, come on. Gordon, where does the spice come from? If it's not the cask, I mean, it's wonderful.
Well, no, it generally will be. You know, look, if you drink, because you get spice can be quite a lot of different things in whiskey. It can be spice can sometimes in a peated whiskey can sometimes be earthiness. It can be a little bit of the peatiness. Sometimes people pick up that on spice. Spice can be tannins from the European oak, so you get a tannic dryness, which seems spicy. It can also just be, you know, the oak influence generally on so sometimes in a bourbon you get wood spice, or so spice is but in sherry cask whiskies there is spice. Not always, but there is spice, and certainly with the 15 there's a little bit. I find it very gentle. I like the balance of the spice. I don't find it overpowering. I just like the change from the luscious distinction, sort of fruity style. I like the gentle spice, which on a palate again, thinking when you would drink a whiskey, Kate, it's almost like the difference between milk chocolate and dark chocolate. Dark chocolate's sweetened, but it's got a slightly different profile. That's what sherry cask. So it is generally from the cask, but it's all about balancing that spice off with everything else that comes from the cask as well, and the spirit, of course.
Well,
hopefully it's
I
not
was
too spicy for you.
No. I love it. But I was wondering if it was coming from your distillation process or if it was coming from the cask.
No,
because
it's more the cask. More the cask.
Yeah, it's very consistent with all the 4 that we've tasted so far, or 5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please have a look at the video. I'll repost it again because it's way up in the chat. But it's a really interesting 12-minute video that will explain sherry cask to you, and really give you an insight into how we do our sherry casks. And we have to. Look, I'll be the first to say, you know, the 15 that you're drinking, the 12 that you're drinking, some of it may have been laid down by us, but those whiskies were laid down by Macallan, the guys that owned the distillery before. So they sold it in 2011 to us, and we took a couple of years to get it up and running and get the sort of process going again. So, you know, the 18-year-old, the 15-year-old are all laid down by the guys of Macallan. And for many years, because of our relationship with Edrington, We bought Glengoyne from Edrington in 2003. And, you know, Macallan was at that point buying the best possible sherry casks the industry could ever get. We now buy those same casks. So we're making these whiskies in the future. So, you know, Macallan is a brand that is, well, it sells 1 million cases. We sell about 50,000, probably 30,000 cases. So we're 3% of the size of Macallan as a brand. But we have to thank them and say, look, they were making, buying great sherry casks. That's why Tamdhu is what it is. And we've just decided to focus on sherry casks. And I'll tell you, we are getting people, you know, a lot of Macallan drinkers saying, gosh, I love Tamdhu. It's fabulous. It's great to try it, and we're enjoying it. And it's a nice one to add into the repertoire. So we're like, fabulous, you know, it's great. And so Tamdhu really is beginning to garner a large amount of fans, which is great. But we can only produce what we do. So I hope you've enjoyed them. I really do.
While we're here, do you want to touch base on the 18 and well, you said if there's any other questions of the ones we've tasted, of the 5 core expressions, do you want to take a guess of what was the favorite? We just voted.
Me guess, batch strength.
You are correct. We built a perfect pyramid, a perfect staircase. 12 distinctions, 15 of batch strength. And batch strength takes it by a nose.
Well, 56% people do like a bit of strength.
But the 15 did really well.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, the 15's great. And, you know, they're all great. And I think it comes down to a lot of people's distinction was a real surprise for me, because not in this, I just mean generally as a whiskey. I love the luscious juiciness of it. It's got those sort of, you know, sort of almost tropical fruit sort of flavors. Then you move into the sort of more dried, darker fruits of the 15, but the batch strength has a real, I mean, it really, the biggest thing about the batch strength is it doesn't taste anywhere near the strength that it is. It's a beautiful whiskey. It really is a beautiful whiskey. And a great, you know, a great whiskey for the price. With the 18, what do we do? Well, we take what we do in the 15, and we just add a little bit more of that European oak. So with this 18 here, we've now got 70% first fill European oak. So you're going to take what the experience that you've had in the 15, and you're going to get more of that European oak influence. This whiskey is sensational, but we produce 3,000 cases a year, 18,000 bottles a year. Sounds a lot. It's not a lot for a big world that loves sherry cask whiskey. So again, as Mike said, pretty rare, but there is some, I think, in the market. So if you like the 15 and you want to be pushed to 46.8% alcohol and more of that European oak, more of that richer style, that cigar-esque whiskey, then absolutely this is the dram for you. And the final whiskey that we spoke about is the cigar malt, which is a very limited edition that we produce solely first fill. So it's an older version, for want of a better phrase, of what we're doing with the Dalby Alley. All first fill European oak at about 53% alcohol. So that's going to be more in the 18 style, but it's a beautiful example of what casks can do. Arguably, there's less Tamdhu in it than maybe the 12 or something like that, but they're still there. Comes with a beautiful cigar cutter. Again, very limited, I think, at the moment, but all first fill, beautiful whiskey. And we do a cigar malt as well. So from a brand that had a 10-year-old and nothing else, we now have a nice range of limited editions and a beautiful core range of 12, 15, 18, and distinction, and the batch strength, which you've had the majority of this tonight. All the things to remember about Tamdhu: everything is always Oloroso sherry from start to finish. We do not finish, we only mature full term. And that makes us, I think, a very different style of whiskey to a lot of other sherry cask whiskies out there. And we really are, thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the drams.
Gordon, all I have to say to you on this May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you.
This is the way.
Very good. Very good. Oh, I love that. That's brilliant.
I feel like I need to apologize right now for Vadim.
No,
This
no,
is the-
I didn't realize it was May the 4th. I was like, May the 4th be with
Oh,
you.
all right.
It's May the 5th for
What-
you.
I was gonna say,
It's-
technically, it's not
it's-
May the
it's-
4th for you anyway, so.
it is May
It's
the
Cinco
5th
de
now, yeah.
Mayo, yeah.
Well, I was in a meeting, can you believe this, about 3 or 4 months ago, and we were talking about tequila terminado, which is our whiskey, obviously, that I was talked about earlier, Smokehead tequila terminado, and they mentioned, well, we should do something for Cinco de Mayo, and I was like, when is that? I'm like, and they all looked at me and they were like, really? And I was like, oh yeah, I've just thought about it. How it shows you how on the ball I was in that meeting. Like, as Mike will tell you, I'm always on the ball in a meeting. But look, I hope you've enjoyed the whiskies. I think, you know, if you've got some 18, enjoy it. It's a beautiful one to finish on. The cigar malt, I don't quite know who's got what, but everything we do is the one thing you notice, and I think Vadim and anybody who's been to Glengoyne, because it's the only one you can the Alexander Murray one, which you have on the end, I actually don't know much about. It's an independent bottling of Tamdhu, so you can take from that, so help yourselves to it. I don't know the cask type, I don't know anything about it. It will be a cask of whiskey that they have got on the market, so probably not even directly from us. I'm sure it's a very nice example of Tamdhu at a high strength, so
It's
probably
actually low
closer.
strength.
Oh, is it? What strength's it at?
It's 40%, which is really disappointing, but it's
Oh,
actually
that is
very
that
tasty.
is- So that's quite odd to find a sort of bottling like that at low strength. But anyway, it might be more in the sort of 10, 12 category than obviously in the batch strength, but I'm sure it's a very nice whiskey. I was assuming it was a high strength one. Please enjoy that on your own. I can't really tell you much about that because I don't know the cask flavors, but think about what you've tasted and how that relates to what you've had so far. It might even be a bourbon cask. I don't even know if it's dark. So
The description is my favorite when it comes to whiskey. It says aged for 7 years in oak barrels
oh, beautifully vague.
before finishing its maturation in sherry butts.
So there you go. Probably matured in refill bourbon, finished in a sherry butt, but what you've tasted all before has been fully matured in sherry butts and things like that. So that was probably a bourbon cask finish or bourbon cask finished in sherry. We don't finish.
If we want to find an ex-bourbon Tamdhu, our only recourse is finding it on the independently bottled market.
Yeah, you might find some. I mean, we've got some in the warehouses, but casks, obviously, not bottles. You'll never see a bourbon cask in this bottle. But you can drink bourbon Tamdhu if you find it in the independent bottling market. Yeah, and it's
Tamdhu
lovely.
Is mostly
It's
going
lovely.
blends. What blends are you in?
So Tamdhu used to be a major constituent part of Famous Grouse, because it was part of Macallan and all that. It's still in a few blends. I don't actually know what blends it still goes into. We still sell spirit. We swap spirit for other people. Sandy tells this beautifully. What's very interesting is that we will see a tanker. So deals will be done on golf courses. We'll see a tanker of Tamdhu leaving, and that'll be going to Chivas, or it'll be going to Diageo or whatever. And then another tanker of their spirit will come into Tamdhu, and we'll fill it into casks, and we'll have, spirit maturing from another distillery. You need that diversity. So that's where the 3.5 million liters of Tamdhu that doesn't go into sherry casks for the whiskey. That's how we use it. And we also need grain whiskey for our blends. So we trade it for grain whiskey as well. So that's a major part of our business.
So when a tanker from a different distillery comes in, you can't call it a single malt from Tamdhu.
No. So when we get a tanker of spirit from Craigellachie or somewhere like that, it might well be technically teaspooned whiskey. It will be used for blends. We'll put it in cask. It might be called something like, they've all got different names on the market. So when you buy a cask of something, or you buy a tanker of something else, it's technically, you might just get spirit and fill it into cask. You might get 3-year-old whiskey that comes in that you fill into cask. There's a whole range of different aspects, but it would be teaspoons so that it's, I mean, look, we're not going to bottle it. We use it in blends. So that's what it's all about. It's all about trust and understanding. And, you know, the going rate is something like 2.5 tankers of grain spirit, which we would use for blends, to 1 tanker going out of Tamdhu. So it's all very untechnical about how the trading goes on. It's all very look people in the eye and do a deal. And it's not, and no money ever changes hands. That's the beauty of this industry. It's all about trust and the people in it, which is why we love working in it. Fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. It's been lovely to speak to you all.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Gordon. Everyone hang out after we finish the recording. We're going to give away this the cigar malt cutter and
nice.
a few other things as well, some samples and whatnot, just for the fun of it. And thank you all for being here tonight.
No, thank you, Vadim. Great to get it off the ground. I remember we spoke about this last summer, so fabulous.
I'm glad we're able to do this. Next time you're on the West Coast, please look me up, and
I'll be seeing Mike at some point. We'll come and see you, definitely, for sure. And all the best, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Gordon.
No worries.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you so much.